Hello, folks, and welcome to another video here on my channel. And this is going to be a bit of a different. It's something I've been planning to do for quite a bit this month. Before I get into what it's about, though, I do want to say that I hope you all enjoyed your Christmas yesterday. Hope you managed to celebrate it as safely as possible, and hopefully you all enjoyed that Family Feud marathon that I had yesterday for my Christmas special. And I will say it was a pretty successful marathon, winning over $98,000 over the course of the 12 games. So that is not too bad. Now, we're going to get into the subject of this video. As you've probably noticed, I tend to play a lot of video games on my channel. Like, sometimes, some game show games and sometimes regular games. So, for this video, I am going to explain to all of you how I first got into video games. This might be a little bit of a long one, so get a snack, get comfy, and listen to everything that I'm about to say. So, how I got... Actually, I'm going to get to that a little bit later. What I'm going to start off with... I should probably start off with how video games got started. And it actually starts off earlier than you would think. Because I actually researched this not too long ago. And the first video game apparently was invented by two college professors in 1958. And it was a simple tennis game. And since this was the 1950s, they really couldn't have any of the fancy graphics back then that you do now. Like, not really anything too special, but that's to be expected for that time period. So, that was actually the very first video game ever invented. Then for a long time, nothing happened. Until the early 70s came around, and a little console called the Atari 2600 released. Now, there were three versions of the Atari console released. The 2600, which was the first one, then the 5200, and finally the 7800. Now, and one of the earliest Atari games ever made was Pong, which again was a simple little tennis game. Not really anything too special. Ball just going doop, 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 over and over again. But still pretty good for what it was back in that time. But then, of course, later on, some of the classics started coming out. Like, you had Pac-Man, Galaga, Space Invaders, Dig Dug, all that good stuff. So everything was going well. Then, and other consoles started coming out during the 70s, like the ColecoVision. And that was a pretty good console, too, from what I've read. In fact, I actually have a book that explains a lot about these early video game consoles. But, yeah, throughout the 70s, like, everything's going really well, and, really well and such. And, of course, Pac-Man came onto the scene in 1980, and it was very popular. In fact, it's actually still popular today. Now, of course, arcades aren't really all that around anymore. But if there were still a lot of arcades right now, I can guarantee you'd probably see a Pac-Man machine somewhere in there. And then, of course, the following year, Donkey Kong, that came out, which was another popular arcade game. And that game, of course, introduced us to Mario. But he wasn't called Mario back then. Back then he was just known as Jumpman. And again, another relatively simple game, Donkey Kong. So all these were fun and all these were good and such. But then, disaster hit. Oh boy. This next thing I'm about to say, this is going to be a doozy. So, during the 70s, video games were doing really well, really becoming a popular thing, until, well, E.T. happened. For those who do not know, E.T. was a very popular movie that came out during the early 1980s, directed by Steven Spielberg and starring, of course, a very young Drew Barrymore. A very good movie. And you would think that that would translate well as a video game. Oh, my friends, you are sadly mistaken. While E.T. was a very good movie, the video game adaptation, let's just say, bombed. In fact, according to what I've read, I've researched this myself, so I'm not making this up. According to what I've researched, the entire game was developed over a 5-week period. Only 5 weeks. So yeah, they apparently had to. So they had to work on. So they not only had to work on the game, but they also had insisted on putting it out for Christmas that year. So not a lot of time. That game, in fact, was so bad that copies of it are buried in landfills somewhere, in the United States. I can almost guarantee you probably would not find a copy of that game in the wild. And now I do not own an Atari myself, but if I were to get my hands on an Atari, yeah, I think it's pretty clear I would stay away from that game. So, after that game bombed, yeah. That huge epic failure of the game of E.T. to the Atari, that could have very well killed the video game industry altogether. And it looked like that was going to be the case. Until it was to be the case. But then, flash forward to 1985, enter Nintendo, who in 1983 had released their own video game machine in Japan, which was known as the Famicom. Famicom, of course, standing for Family Computer. In short, for Family Computer. And that machine did not come out until 1985, and even then, and when it originally came out, it only released in a few cities. Likely as a test product, because it was still fairly recently, because this was now 3 years after the failure of the video game adaptation of E.T., so people were a little on the fence, like worried, oh, what if this doesn't sell well, or whatever. So they were a little hesitant. So stores, as you can probably imagine, were a little hesitant about carrying the NES. But, well, it came out, and it was a hit. Mainly because of one certain character, or one certain game, rather, that was packed in with it. That game, of course, being the ever-popular Super Mario Brothers. And of course, by this point, Jumpman's name had changed to the more familiar name that we all know and love today of Mario. So, in fact, Super Mario Brothers is actually the best-selling NES game ever, among the best-selling NES games ever. And that game did so well that it resulted in more cities deciding to release the NES, or carry it. Which was a good thing, because the following year, another popular character made his debut on the system. That character being known as Link in the Legend of Zelda franchise. A franchise that, by the way, celebrates its 35th anniversary this upcoming February, so that'll definitely be fun. Now, Legend of Zelda, while it is a great franchise, it's not really one that I've played a whole lot of. But anyways, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so let's go back to 1986. Legend of Zelda comes out, and of course, just like with Super Mario Brothers, everyone loves it. Loved it. And as a result, more and more games started coming out for it. And now, and then of course, Super Mario Brothers' success, as well as Zelda's success on the NES, spawned a couple of sequels. In Zelda's case, it was Zelda 2: The Adventures of Link, which had theme music for, whose music in that one, by the way, the overall theme music, from what I've seen on YouTube, that the overall music in there is completely different than in the first game. I think it's actually the only game in the Zelda franchise that doesn't carry this classic Zelda theme. And I'm sure all you gamers out there know what I'm talking about, so I'm not gonna hum the theme or anything like that. Super Mario, on the other hand, spawned a couple of sequels on the NES, one of which was only released exclusively in Japan, only available in Japan for a while. The actual Super Mario Brothers 2 came out in 1986 in Japan, and however, it did not come over to the States at that time because they thought it would be too hard for us. So our Super Mario Brothers 2 was actually based off a separate game called Doki Doki Panic. Completely different enemies and bosses, but some of those enemies that were introduced in that game later would go on to become permanent fixtures in the Mario universe. Like, for example, the Shy Guys and Birdo, of course, made her debut in that one. Then Super Mario Bros. 3 comes out in 1990, and that, of course, went back to being the traditional platforming game. It was pretty much exactly the same as Super Mario Brothers, but even better, because you had a lot more levels to explore. And that game set the standard for what a lot of Mario games are like today. So, Mario Brothers 3 came out in 1990, but before that, it was actually introduced to America the previous year in the movie The Wizard. A movie that's a very good movie, by the way, which I have not seen yet, and I probably should see it. Yeah, it's a very good movie. If you have not seen it, I would highly recommend it, even though I have not seen it myself, like I said. Then, 1991 comes around, and the Super Nintendo comes out that summer. Now, this is right around the point where I received my first video game system. But it was not the Super Nintendo. No. At this point, we were, I would say, about maybe halfway through the NES's life cycle or whatever, and the Super Nintendo was about to come out. Now, here's where now this, of course, is what I was hinting at the beginning. This is how I got into it. So back around 1990 or 1991, I don't know exactly which year it is because I was very small back then, but it was somewhere around there. For the sake of argument, let's say 1991. Right around that point where a man by the name of Bill Cook presented my dad with an NES system. Now, and he figured, this was just like completely out of the blue, certainly unexpected. He gives it to my dad and says, "Oh, your kids would probably like this." And my dad brought that home. Well, yeah, I did love it. I think one of the first games I played on it happened to be Super Mario Brothers. And being at a young age, I don't think I got very far. My brother, on the other hand, was pretty good at that. In fact, when it comes to most video games that my brother and I have played against each other, he's usually beaten me. Or is better than me. But yeah, I definitely had some good memories with that original NES. I definitely remember playing Super Mario Brothers on it, as well as Mario Brothers 2 and 3. But, of course, other types of games that I enjoyed on the NES were, of course, the game show games that they came out with. Specifically, the ones based off Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy! Although between the two, I think Wheel of Fortune was probably my favorite. Probably the one I played more of on the NES. And there were actually other game show games that were supposed to release for the NES, like Card Sharks, Super Password, Price is Right, etc. And I can guarantee the NES version of Price is Right, had it come out, likely would have been 10 times better than the DOS version that released in 1990. We do not speak of the DOS version of Price is Right. That game is terrible. I've only played it on my channel maybe once, never again. But yeah. And because we got that around the time the Super Nintendo was coming out, I ended up skipping the Super Nintendo era altogether, at least during my childhood. Now, it's important to note that these NES game show games were made by GameTek. And they didn't just make game show games on the NES. They also made some educational games on the NES. One being Fisher-Price Perfect Fit, which I did play a bit of at that time, during when I was small. I mean, I was like 4, 5 years old. I probably wouldn't play that now. But yeah, those are definitely some of the games I enjoyed playing on the NES. A lot. Now, as for the Super Nintendo, like I said, I never owned one during my childhood, but I did play Super Nintendo games, like, at my cousin Mike's house, or at least the house they lived at during that point. Because he had a Super Nintendo, and as a result, that introduced me to some of the sports games that were on there. Actually, no, I take that back. There was one sports game I do remember playing on the NES a lot of, particularly with my brother. Blades of Steel, which I actually happen to have a copy of on my shelf. Alright, so now we're getting into the Super Nintendo, and like I said, even though I did not own a Super Nintendo, I did play some of the games with my cousin, like, on his, including, like, the NHL series by EA Sports. And during that time, it was probably a lot better than what they have today, because obviously back then you had no Ultimate Team, you had no cards, you didn't have any of those, or the EA SHL, none of those stupid microtransaction gimmicks that you have today. Back then, it was you just pay for the retail price of the game, and you play the game. That was it. What else did I play in Super Nintendo? Oh yes, Super Mario Kart. That was another good one. I love Super Mario Kart. And I think I played a bit of Legend of Zelda Link to the Past on that too, but I don't quite remember. Pretty sure I played NBA Jam on that, but yeah. Anyways, those were some good times back then. But like I said, in our house, in our old house that is, we skipped the Super Nintendo entirely and went straight for the N64 when that came out in 1996. And actually, as one would expect, the first N64 game we had was, of course, Super Mario 64. Which was a very good game. We did not 100% it, but although my brother did come pretty close, getting to 117 stars, I did pretty okay with the game myself on my own save file I had on there, but I don't think I beat the game back then. I know another game I definitely remember playing on that N64, the original one that is, was of course Mario Kart 64. Which of course I happen to have for my current N64 that I have. A very fun game. Always love playing Mario Kart. Let's see, I also played Pokemon Stadium on the original one. That was a lot of fun. And back then, this was when it was the original 150, and shinies weren't shinies weren't a thing back then. So they were just their regular colors, and that was pretty much it. And of course, the N64 is also launched popular Mario Party series. That's one series I've always enjoyed. Now, for those who do not know, Nintendo actually had a lawsuit on their hands with that one because of people getting blisters on their hands from constant rotating the control stick on some of the mini games. So, as a result, Nintendo had to take out those types of mini games for future Mario Party installments. Fortunately, though, I don't think I was one of the ones that got those blisters, but Nintendo was like, well, better be safe than sorry. And even playing the original Mario Party today on the N64, I still managed to avoid getting blisters. Speaking of Mario Party on the N64, that is actually one of the games that you'll be seeing in my New Year's Blowout special that's coming up in a few days, so definitely be on the lookout for that. But yeah, Mario Party's always a good time. Same with Mario Kart. Then, so we had that for a while. Then, around mid-2002, we traded that in for a Nintendo GameCube, which was also a pretty decent system. I mean, it would crash a few times, but wasn't really anything too bad. And some of my games I definitely remember playing on that were Double Dash and Mario Party 4 I remember playing on there. I don't think I played Luigi's Mansion, the original one. Although I've heard that that's a very good game. And keep in mind that we didn't really have a whole lot of games for either of these systems. It was only like a handful that we had for each system back then. Because buying every game for all these systems, as you know, would have been pretty expensive. So we had that GameCube for quite a bit, actually, because 2006 the Wii came out, but we did not get a Wii right away. In fact, I did not get my Wii until 2011. But I'm jumping ahead of myself, because before I got the Xbox 360 for Christmas 13 years ago. And I've definitely had a lot of fun with that. Let's see, I played the Simpsons game on it. Didn't really get too far in that, mainly because the main types of games I would play on the Xbox 360 would be the sports games, like NHL, NBA, baseball, etc. Let's see. That particular 360 lasted until about Thanksgiving 2009, and then it got the red rings and it had to be replaced. And that replacement is actually the one I still have today. It still runs pretty good. Now, before I get to the Wii, though, I have to rewind even a little bit more, because before we got the GameCube, we got the PlayStation 2. That was, I think, 2001 or 2002. And naturally, it was something that my brother had, but I was still able to play a few games on it also. Simpsons Hit and Run was one of them, which I actually did a Let's Play of that game about almost 6 years ago now. What else? Definitely the NHL series. Did I play Simpsons Hit and Run on that? I don't think I did. I know I played it on the GameCube. I didn't own it though. I rented it from Blockbuster at one point. Back when Blockbuster was still a thing. I know I had Road Rage on the GameCube. That was always a lot of fun, like I said. And of course, with me being the game shows, I would play Wheel of Fortune on there. So yeah, definitely a lot of fun. Now, let's see. Then, around 2009, I think it was. No, not 2009. It was 2010. That's when my brother moved into his own place. And when he did, he took the Nintendo GameCube with him, I do believe. At this point, our PS2 had stopped working, and obviously we didn't get a replacement console for that. At that time, anyway. So, yeah, he took the GameCube with him, which meant that for a good while, we didn't have any video game systems in the house. But then in 2011, well, except for the 360, that is, I still had that. So I could play that. Then 2011 comes around, and that was when I got the Wii. I got that for my 24th birthday, about a week earlier than my birthday, but still. And that was a lot of fun. The first game, actually, that I got with the Wii was actually bundled in with it, I do believe. It was Mario Kart Wii. That, of course, is always a lot of fun, Mario Kart Wii. Yeah, I definitely remember playing Mario Kart on there. What else did I play on there? I had a few games for the Wii. One being Fortune Street, which I do not own anymore. But that was still a pretty fun game. Let's see. There was Mario Super Sluggers. I know it's Smash Brothers on the Wii. And actually, yeah, they did, because I have a copy of that. And, yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love the Wii. In fact, I actually still have the Wii in my collection to this very day. Almost 10 years now. It will be 10 years this July. And still working pretty well, I might add. Now, the version of the Wii that I got was the black one. And at the time I got it, GameCube, it was still backwards compatible with GameCube titles. But then, of course, wouldn't you know it, right after I got mine, Nintendo eliminated that feature with future units. Okay. Then, yes, the Wii was definitely very successful. A lot more successful, in fact, than Nintendo's next console that followed, which was the Wii U. Which I got my Wii U in 2013, I think it was. Yeah, 2013. I still have it, but I don't use it anymore, mainly because the disc reader on it, doesn't really work anymore. And so, yeah, that's that. But one game I do remember playing on the Wii U a lot was Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart, of course, always a lot of fun. And what else did I play on the Wii U? I know there was Mario Party 10 on the Wii U, in 2015. I did purchase a copy of that like in 2017, but just my luck. But of course, my Wii U decided not to let me play it, despite the fact that the disc was brand new, not even scratched or anything. I tried like 2 copies, both very clean, both brand new condition, and it would not let me do it. I don't know why, because that was complete bull crap, honestly, but I digress. Then, let me see, then 2016 comes around, and my cousin Anthony was getting rid of his PlayStation 3, and he asked if I wanted it, and I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. And let's see, I think what I played the most on the PS3, I think, was basically MLB The Show. That was really about it. As for the original PlayStation, that came out in 1995, but we did not own one during that era. In fact, I didn't get my PS1 until 2014. And then, of course, the Sega Dreamcast I didn't get until about a year and a half ago, even though that system is like 20 years old now. 21, actually, because that system was a 1999 release. But yeah, the Wii U did not do very well at all. I think it only sold like 14 million units total. But Nintendo's next system, and actually as of right now their most recent system, has sold a lot better. That being the Nintendo Switch, which I absolutely love. In fact, as you've seen, I've got quite a lot of games for it, including Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Mario Odyssey, among many others. I absolutely love that thing. Where Nintendo will go with the Switch in the future, I have no idea, but there's still many more games that still have to come out. And, oh, one more thing I also completely forgot about. I did own a Game Boy at one point, a Game Boy Color, that is. Getting that in the late 90s. And I mainly used that for playing Pokemon. That was pretty much the main thing I played on there. It was Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, as well as the Gen 2 games. In fact, I think the strongest Pokemon I had on Crystal, when I had the Game Boy Color, was a level 92 Typhlosion. But then, there was one night during one of my hockey banquets, this would have been 2001, where I made the mistake of leaving my Game Boy lying around on a table somewhere. I think I put it down on a table somewhere because I had to use the bathroom or whatever, and when I came back out, it wasn't there anymore. So, lesson learned, never leave stuff lying around. And yeah, that is pretty much it. So if it hadn't been for that Bill Cook guy that I was talking about earlier, if it wasn't for him giving my dad that NES to gift to me, I likely would not be a video gamer today. But as it stands, well, here I am. And of course I do enjoy a lot of the games. And so there you go, folks. That is how I got into video games. Something that I've always loved, still love to this day, and will continue to love. I'm going to continue, of course, to play these games for as long as I possibly can. And so yeah, that is pretty much about all I have to say on this one. So thank you all very much for listening and for watching. How far are we in here? Oh, almost 35 minutes. See, I told you guys this was going to be a bit of a long one. And I ended up being right. But yeah, that is definitely going to do it. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching this video and listening to me tell all these stories. And I will see you all again for another video soon.